Storytelling. It is probably one of the top two skills necessary in order to be good at interacting and attracting women. And not only that, it's probably one of the top three skills necessary to be great at influencing and communicating with people. If you possess this skill, you literally have a superpower to be able to influence people, to be able to move crowds, and to get people to move and feel things that they otherwise wouldn't have felt. If you don't possess the skill, then you lack the ability to make any kind of impact in this world. Speaking of which, how are your storytelling skills? Are you a good storyteller? Now, you might be thinking, yeah, I'm okay. I can tell a few good stories here and there, nothing great. But the way I define it is like this. Unless you can get a crowd of people to be leaning into you, to be going, wow, this is amazing, this is awesome, oh my God, tell me more, you're so funny, haha, I want to go home with you. Unless you can do that, then you don't know storytelling. You're not a good storyteller. But worry not. Your boy Pablo here is going to help you with that today, because in this episode, I'm going to break down what storytelling is, how to do it, why is it important, and how you can take your storytelling to the next level. So that way you can become more charismatic, more charming, more interesting, and a whole lot more. So if that's what you want to learn, that's what you're into, then stick around, because that's what we're about to get into. Welcome back to the Red Velvet Podcast. What's happening, Captain? I'm your host with the most, Pablo Rosario, and it's so great to be back with you this Monday. Now, for me, on my end, lots of things going on. I hope you're well, by the way. I sometimes wish that we could have a two-way conversation, because when I do ask how you're doing, I really do mean it. I'm really curious, and I'm really, wondering and hoping that you're okay and you're doing well. Lately, I've been doing these TikTok lives, and they've been great because it's been a fantastic opportunity to interact with people, to get to know people, to see what people are struggling with these days. And I gotta tell you, man, I'm sad. I'm really sad these days because, well, not really these days, but just kind of sad in general, because a lot of guys are going through some rough shit out there. I thought that the worst part of their problem was maybe that they were too shy or maybe too anxious to talk to a woman, but a lot of guys are going through some real stuff. There have been guys and people that hop on the chat that they're dating a woman, but she goes and cheats and then tries to tell them, oh no, you're too good for me, we should break up. Or another guy that I recently talked to today on the live, that his lady was giving her number out to other guys, claiming that, oh yeah, no, they're just friends, I just give out my number as friends. And the thing that breaks my heart about it is that these people, people that they happen to, is they do not understand that they're hurting themselves by allowing this type of behavior. They are hurting themselves, and it's kind of like a masochist sort of thing, where they are inflicting pain on themselves, where they're addicted to the pain. Because when you hear it from the outside, it's a no-brainer. Yes, if your lady is giving out her number to other dudes and claiming oh, let's just be friends, it's just friends, and she does it frequently, then that's a red flag, right? And I get it, when we're in relationships, I understand that it's kind of hard to see things sometimes, but the thing that hurts me is just what you're allowing to do for yourself, what you're allowing to happen to you. It's like allowing yourself to get slapped over and over and not doing anything about it. And that just really hurts me, because lots of great guys out there. And so that's that's why when I ask, how are you doing? I really mean it. And, if you, want to write back and just follow me on Instagram or TikTok and send me a DM, hey, Pablo, you said on your podcast, how you doing? I want to talk. I want to get some things off my chest. I'm here for you. Holler at me. At TikTok, I'm at Pablo J. Rosario, or on Instagram, I'm at pablo.j.rosario. Now, I would have him be the same, but some other person has my name. I'm gonna reach out to him, offer him $50, see if he wants to give up the handle. That way, it's all could be one thing. But other than that, here on my end, I've been excited. Besides that thing, I've been really excited on my end, because I'm working on this boot camp. Now, I've talked about it a couple times in the last episode, but just especially this week, I've been so it's taken to another level. And the reason why is because I finally get to teach what I've been waiting to teach all these years. Now, the guys that I've been coaching, fantastic guys, but we had to establish the foundation, and we had to master the foundation first. I couldn't teach them all the advanced stuff because I didn't want to like overwhelm them and have them think of like 15 things at the same time. I wanted to keep it simple, you know what I mean? But this time around, now we get into the advanced stuff. Now we have a chance to get into the fun stuff. And what that fun stuff is, it is how to work a room, how to talk to a group of people, get them interested in you, how to use your face, how to use your hands to grab attention, to command attention, how to like talk and make a group laugh, how to get a group to want to invite you over to be their friends. Like I can't tell you how many times, like especially with me and going out, where there's been times where I've gone in places by myself. And by the way, I don't like, for me, going out to places by myself is not a big deal. And the same thing with my guys, because by the time I go in there, a lot of stuff that I teach in the Red Velvet way is the idea about making new friends there. And that's typically what happens where there's a new group of people that I meet, a new group of friends that I make. And by the end of the night, you're saying hi and bye to everybody, and everybody's giving you hugs. It's like literally the most fun thing ever. At the boot camp, like I said, but I think I talked about this on the last podcast, but we're gonna do a wardrobe makeover. Now I get to go in deep and talk about like the real hints about why dressing well is so important. And I might maybe make an episode about it, but it's probably one of the underused methods and strategies for meeting people, for standing out. So we're gonna do that. We're also going to talk about storytelling, which, by the way, is a great transition for this episode because storytelling, it is probably hands down one of the top 2 ways to meet people, to create attraction and get them interested in you. Whether that is you're single and you're trying to meet someone new, whether you're a professional and you're trying to advance in your career and maybe stand out amongst your colleagues, boss, or clients, storytelling is probably one of the best ways to become a person of influence, to become a person that others are attracted to. Why? Well, storytelling is something that's been around for ages, like the caveman days. Like, have you ever seen on, National Geographic where there are images on the caves? That's a story that they've decided to pass on. And as humans, we've been fascinated by stories because they take us to a different place, because they activate our imagination, our imagination. You see what happens when you're Spanish? The words get mumbled up, but we keep it going. We keep it flowing, all right? But it activates the imagination and it captivates emotion. That's why storytelling is so important. It's such a crucial skill. And if you notice, all of the influential people throughout history, all of the most influential teachers have used storytelling to influence people, to teach lessons, to pass on things. And I think the reason why is because, humans, we don't like to be just told things. I mean, we can, but the impact is not the same. I think the reason why storytelling is such a crucial thing, and the reason why it has the effect that it does, is because it combines emotion with information. See, my partner, Kirby, she told me that, there's actually a recipe for you to remember stuff. And information alone, you see what happens? Information alone is not enough. People forget things, but people do not forget things when they feel something. I mean, think about it. Anytime you've had a really serious moment, intense moment, you've never forgotten that. You've never forgotten your first heartbreak. You've never forgotten the first time you got in a car crash, knock on wood. If not, hopefully that doesn't happen. But those things stick out in your head because of the emotion. And with story, it does that. Story helps you remember and feel things. And on top of that, going back to what I said about like the world's greatest politicians and public speakers, they know that in the midst of emotion, they can slip in messages that get you to think and feel a certain way. On this last mastermind that we had with my Red Velvet group, this is the men's group that I run, and every month we have 2 group calls a month, and one of those, it's more than a workshop type of thing where we work on a certain skill for that month, and this month was storytelling. And this month, We worked on delivery, on how to use your voice, on how to project your voice, how to talk in a more delightful sort of way. We talked about pacing. We talked about actual different types of stories, how to use them, when to use them. And what we did is that we looked up live examples. I pulled clips from movies. I pulled clips from like interviews of people telling stories. And it was a great way just to see in action, to be on the receiving end of what it's like to hear someone tell a story. And so when you understand that effect, when they understood that effect, now they can tweak their stories and they know what to do differently. You get what I'm saying? And so yeah, that's the stuff that we're going to be talking about at the boot camp. I mean, we're going to be doing that. And if you want to know more about the boot camp, if you're interested in doing it, just do me a favor. Just send me an email to my personal email at pablo@pablojrosario.com. Say, hey, Pablo, I heard on the podcast you're having a boot camp coming up. I want to know more about it. And it's going down at the end of May. 8 spots available right now. 3 of them are already taken up already. So there's only 5 left. And there's being taken up every day, so you want to hop on that. But I figured, you know what? It's a great opportunity to share with you, my good friend, and put you on the storytelling, up your storytelling game. So first, let's talk about this. Me, I used to suck at storytelling. Like I suck. I'll tell you this one thing. I remember this one time. This is the day that I knew I sucked at storytelling, and I knew I had to do something different. I was in a car with a group of friends, and we were in the Bahamas. And then we were laughing back and forth, and I started to tell a story. Everyone was listening, and I'm thinking it's having a good time. But by the end of the story, I stopped, and I'm done with the story, and then the car goes quiet. Everybody's like, oh, is that it? And I was like, yeah. And then that's when it hit me. Oh shit, I need to learn how to tell better stories, because that was embarrassing. And from that point on, I made it a point to learn how to tell stories. Like, what's the structure, how to actually deliver a story. So what I would do, I would watch comedians and see how they told stories. I would watch dramatic movies and see how they delivered stories. And I would model that. And I'm here thinking about other people that also suck at stories. And the reason why I think they suck at stories is because, well, one is because people, they just communicate information, like they just word vomit, which is what I did. I just word vomit and not understanding the purpose of telling a story. It's not just to say information, but it's to communicate an emotion, an experience. And the other reason is just simply not knowing the structure. And in knowing this, that's why I wanted to have this podcast, to solve those 2 problems for you. And so really quickly, right off the bat, as far as the question, Pablo, I don't really have anything to talk about. I don't really have a story. Well, here's the thing. I beg to differ. You do not need to be jet setting across the world, going on adventures in order to have good stories to tell. Because yes, those are great, but what's even more important is your ability to take everyday life and turn it into a great story. The best storytellers, the reason why they're great is because they're able to take the littlest thing and turn it into fantastic. Now, how do you do that? Well, it was funny because one of the guys in the group asked, he was like, Pablo, how do you take like an everyday thing and turn it into something great? And I told him, well, what is required is a change in perspective. You need to develop the perspective of finding the extraordinary and the mundane. Because it's not that life is boring. It's not that there's nothing going on. It's that you're boring. It's that you are not really looking around you. You're not really appreciating life and having that perspective and intentionally looking for what's interesting in your life. Now, I get it. Sometimes we live like a regular day where we wake up, go to work, maybe we work out, see friends. Like, what's great about that? But I would say this to fix that. And the way to get started, the way to start better communicating and seeing the world in a special way is simply just to ask yourself, at the end of the night, ask yourself, what stood out? What stood out? It could be like, oh, this lady had a funny dress, or I saw a commercial and I started to laugh, or I just got a phone call and that phone call brought me down. Whatever it was, that you can build a story around. And the reason why is because it stood out to you for a reason. Something about it grabbed you and it's stuck in your mind. And remember what I talked about before, emotion plus information equals retention. And so there was something about that caught your mind. And so what I would do if I were you is go, okay, well, why did that stick out to me? And then whatever answer you come up with, That is the backbone behind your story. So maybe it was funny. Maybe it made you think of home. Maybe it brought up a bad memory of a time you were frustrated. Well, what was that time and why did it make you frustrated? And so when you think about it like that, you start asking yourself, well, what stuck out to me? Now you have an endless opportunity to create a story out of nothing. Now you have an opportunity to take your average day and just make it the best thing ever. And that's something for me that a lot of my girlfriends have commented on, that I'm able to take the most random thing and blow it up into a funny story. I've told stories about the supermarket. I've told stories about the gym. And funny enough, my partner that I'm dating, I remember when we went on our first date, I was super nervous and I was like, well, what do you talk about? Like, what do you say? And this was my first date out of college. And so for me, it was like, oh, wow, this is like my first real adult date. What do you talk about? And I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna talk about the crazy lady that I saw on the train on the way there. And then when I showed up, that was my conversation starter. That's what we started talking about. I told a story about how I saw this old lady doing these yoga poses on the train that were a little bit, a little bit freaky. And I was like, yo, old lady, are you trying to seduce me? And anyway, I used that story. Like you see right now, it's a little bit funny. And boom, conversation started. Boom, laughter ensued because I was able to take something mundane in my environment and turn it into a fun story. Now, let's get into the second part. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of the bad thing. How do you actually tell the story? Well, this is what I recommend you do. So very first thing. So first off, either A, pick out what's something that stuck out in my day. B, another thing you could do is think about, well, what are my favorite stories to tell? So that's another option. I want you to write it down on a piece of paper. What are my favorite stories to tell? Or number three, another thing you can do is you can think about this like, all right, well, do I have any fun stories about my friends? Do I have any fun stories about my family, about work, about travel, or my passion? Those 5 things are usually the topics that come up in conversation. And so are there any funny stories or any great stories that you like to tell? They don't have to be amazing. You just have to like them. And whatever they are, write it on a piece of paper. So that's step one. So once you have that, now I want you to take the story and you're going to put it within the following structure, which I'm going to give you. Now, this structure, money. This structure, you can take it and then you can apply it to any story and turn it into something fantastic. And it goes like this. So there are 3 parts. I'm going to break it down. Okay. So part 1 is just what's the story about? Simple as that. Every story, you have to let them know what you're talking about. You can't just jump right into it because then people can't follow along. You can't just be like, oh, then I saved the cat and the cat was wild. You can't just be that because people are like, whoa, wait, how do we even get here? What are you talking about? What you want to do is just set the stage. Tell people what the story is about. Now, it's pretty simple. Now, you don't have to do anything fantastic. You could be something as simple like wow, this is my favorite band. Simple as that. You could be like, the Jonas Brothers are my favorite band. Maroon 5 is my favorite band. Just boom. Okay. That's how you start the story. Now people know, okay, he's going to talk about this band. All right, so what about this band? And if you think about it, every great story just starts out with a beginning. So think about Disney. Disney or any other fairy tale goes with once upon a time. There was a blank who did blank. Okay, now we know what we're about to talk about. And so every story that you start off with, just simply just let them know, hey, I love sushi. Oh, that reminds me. And by the way, that's a great transition. You go, by the way, that reminds me, blank is my favorite band. That reminds me, blank, I love sushi, is my favorite food ever. So you want to do it like a declarative statement. Oh, that reminds me, sushi is my favorite food in the world. Oh, that reminds me, I love going to the baseball park. Baseball is my favorite sport. Oh my God, like I love doing these podcasts. I love talking to people. That's a great way to start it. Which brings me into part 2, which is probably the most important part. Peep this out. Now, part 2, it is where you say what happened, but more importantly, why is it important to you? Why did it stick out to you? Or how did it affect you? And so, because what a lot of people, when they tell stories, they make the mistake of just saying what happened. So like, for example, they'll be like, yeah, so I woke up and I went to the gym, I worked out for a little bit, then I went to work where it was crazy, but then after work, I went to happy hour and I worked out a little bit, some more, and then I saw a friend, I came home, I watched Netflix, and then now I'm just here talking to you. Like, you see how that doesn't do anything, you're just stating facts. That doesn't do anything. What we want to do is that we want to invoke emotion. We want to add emotional weight to our stories. This is the number one thing. This is the key that gets people invested. This is the thing that makes people want to know more. This is the thing that makes people want to feel something. Because anytime you answer the question, why? Simply that. Why does it stick out to you? How did it affect you? Or why did it change you? When you answer that question, what happens, you unknowingly start talking about your own emotions. You start talking about how, it was wild because it really reminds me of my mom and I felt really connected. Oh, I love sushi because I've never had it before and it was me getting us out of my comfort zone. Like if you notice right now, do you notice like the feelings that are coming up within you? You get what I'm saying? So like as opposed to the story I told before about waking up and going to the gym, you can just simply say, I woke up and then I went to the gym and I worked out a little bit. And it was important for me because I used to be, not be happy with my body. But every time I go to the gym, it's like an act of self-love where like, yo, you're worth it. And it makes me feel like I'm that guy that I see in my head. And so you see how now I'm adding emotion to it. Now how you start to feel something. And that's what I want you to do with your story. I don't want you to, go on about what happened, like maybe a little bit, just to set the scene, but focus on why that's important. So like, here's another example where you could be like, I love this band. I love this band because it always reminds me of going to my first party with my first concert with my brother. And me and my brother, like that was me and my brother's time where we really feel connected, and I really felt like a good bond with my brother. And so, boom, you see, now you have a reason why. Now I'm invoking emotion. Now I'm communicating about feeling a bond with my brother, and you feel that too. Now, another thing you can do as well is that, like, when you're saying these things, you can also communicate things about you. So, like, for example, if I want to communicate that I'm ambitious, or if I want to communicate that I'm successful, then instead of just saying I'm successful, what I would do to tell a story would be like, yeah, no, I remember at work I had this crazy project. And actually, you know what? Let me tell you a great story. Back when I was working with Neil Strauss, I was running a boot camp, actually no, an event out in Las Vegas, and it was wild because so many things went wrong. And there was this one time where one piece of the event where we had a supply that I thought didn't come in yet. Like we needed supply for the next day, for the last day. And I stayed up till 6 in the morning trying to figure out and calling places to figure it out. But I ended up pulling it through, and it meant a lot for me because I overcame my anxiety, I overcame my fear. Instead of freaking out, I realized that, yo, I can handle tough situations. And that if I want to go big, I gotta risk big. And I ended up risking big, and it worked out for me. And so in that story, I told you a lot about myself. I told you that I run big conferences. I told you that I'm a person who doesn't give up. And so you can do that along with your story. So one thing you can do is maybe, hey, if I'm talking to a woman, or if I'm maybe talking to a colleague, or I'm talking to a boss, and I want to communicate that I'm ambitious, I want to communicate that I'm hardworking, then have a story where it does show that you're hardworking, and that the lesson of the story is that you're hardworking. Are you following so far? I hope you guys are keeping up. And let me just recap for you real quick. So part one, first thing as far as the story structure is that you're gonna say what the story's about. It's in a simple sentence. Oh, this is my favorite band. I love this food. I love working here. This is my passion because I love traveling to Europe. Just let them know what it's about. Part two.